James Bond 007. Everybody and their dog has been asking me to make a game review of IO's upcoming title. And I get it, because much like IO Interactive, my channel is best synonymous with Hitman. However, at the same time, making a game review based solely off of a gameplay trailer is like making a sandwich review based entirely off of what you see on the menu. It is just not the way to do things. Has Ubisoft taught you nothing? And besides that, we don't have to look towards the future to figure out what an IO Interactive game looks like when they work on anything else besides Hitman, because, let's face it, we already have that data. Just take a look. The year is 2007, a time in which microtransactions and season passes are words that nobody understands. Because they weren't invented yet, you can fill up your entire gas tank without having to worry about selling an organ first, and your value as a human being is not determined by the amount of likes you have on your profile picture. What a time to be alive! Well, not for IO Interactive. They had just finished the Hitman series a year prior, in 2006 with Hitman Blood Money, and were stuck in a bit of a rut, wondering as to what they wanted to do next. However, they wouldn't be able to wonder much longer because their investors began pushing for a new release. So, after greenlighting Kane and Lynch, literally right after the release of Blood Money, with just a year of development, their brand new game was about to release. Now, the game would ultimately become synonymous with gaming history, though it wouldn't be for the reason IO was expecting. Kane and Lynch is IO Interactive's first proper separation from the Hitman series. Given just how much nuance they brought to Agent 47, you'd expect the same amount of effort to be brought here. But you'd be wrong. Kane and Lynch's gameplay is quite diverse. You can choose between running and shooting, standing and shooting, and crouching and shooting. You can also take cover from time to time if you're close enough to a wall and the auto cover mechanic decides to kick in. When it comes to shooting, you have about a 1 in 5 chance of hitting what you're actually aiming at, no matter if you're in the middle of the crosshair or not, as this game's crosshair is more of a suggestion rather than an actual certainty, which is exceptionally fun anytime you have to deal with precise shots, stealth kills, or, my personal favorite, long-ranged takedowns, where you have a better chance of hitting the lottery than whatever enemy you're aiming at. Unlike most modern shooters, there is no feedback when you hit certain targets, like visual or sound effects, or a certain vibration. It's basically like shooting wallpaper at all times. It's genuinely the most unsatisfying mechanic I've ever played. Enemies are complete brainless meat shields who constantly run around in front of you and ambush you from behind. I feel the developer had an exceptional fetish when it comes to that, as anytime you're about to enter into a small area, you'll be met by multiple enemies waiting for you, ready to gun you down in a second. Luckily, your AI teammates are able to bring you back, as long as they're not busy walking directly in front of you while you're trying to fire, blocking your field of view, or getting stuck somewhere behind and having to wait 5 minutes for them to find their way to you. My personal favorite is when they decide to get killed in the most impossible to maneuver of situations, where if you don't revive them you will fail the mission, but you have enemies literally at all sides, who can gun you down in less than a second. And by the way, that happens all the time. You're in full health one moment and then you're dead in the next. It happens so often, I stopped paying attention to it after a while. And though you may think that this is as bad as it gets, you'll be in for a surprise. Because as it seems, even IO was self-aware about how monotone this game is. So they tried to add some additional sections to give you some variety. For starters, shooting from a moving vehicle is easily the worst feeling you will ever have playing a video game. The aim is entirely restricted to the middle of the screen, so it's impossible to shoot anyone further than that. And you can't move it around too much either, as the sensitivity is so far decreased you can barely get any changes of direction. The lack of a proper minimap is extremely annoying and makes traversing open areas an absolute mess. And when it comes to stealth, honestly it's such a joke that it's not even worth mentioning. However, environmental destruction is kind of cool, and as far as the story is concerned,
Kane and Lynch Dead Men is an ugly, ugly game. You're just left with a bunch of really ugly characters that just become impossible to care about over time. F*** you! It's just lazy. Take a look at it, but it's probably not worth the purchase. F*** you!
And that right there is the story, because as some of you may know, developers and especially publishers love paying certain gaming outlets to give them good reviews. GameSpot, IGN, especially IGN in recent years, have been known to give games that are beyond mediocre high ratings because of under-the-table payments. And back in 2007, that was exactly the case. Eidos, a developer that merged with IO Interactive, paid a lot of money to GameSpot to both advertise the game on their website as well as give them a good review. So when Jeff Gertzman came out and absolutely bombed the review, giving the game a 6 out of 10 and mocking its mediocre gameplay and nonsensical story, upper management were so mad, so angry, they just fired his fucking ass. I mean, what other game in history has been able to create a rival organization to GameSpot, obviously that is Giant Bomb, by just existing as a bad game, they were able to create another gaming outlet. That is the history and ultimate story when it comes to Kane and Lynch. However, when it comes to the actual story of Kane and Lynch, well, let's just say it pales in comparison. Spoiler alert. The story revolves around the mysterious group called The Seven, even though it only has 4 members. This group is one of the most powerful and influential criminal organizations the world has to offer, able to bring down governments and holding an entire militia, which they use to rescue Kane and Lynch. Not because they like him or anything, but because he owns the money. Yes, this criminal group, which has more money than all the federal governments combined, breaks a prisoner out on his way to death row so he could get them the money he stole from them. If this doesn't make any sense to you, follow along, I promise you, it's only getting worse. Our main protagonist Kane is an ex-mercenary. He has betrayed all of his men and stolen from everyone he's worked for, so the Seven of course hire him to get back the money he stole, or else his wife and daughter, that absolutely despise him, will be killed. How can I put this politely? Kane is an imbecile. Every single heist he plans is for him to go up against the entire police force and military, helped by his partner Lynch, who is at best a fuck-up and at worst a liability. Everything Lynch touches turns to shit. He's usually the one responsible for every single plan going wrong, because he's a psycho who's too stupid to follow simple instructions. And after these two colossal fuck-ups fail to get the money, it turns into a revenge saga after Kane's wife is killed and his daughter is kidnapped. Kane rescues some of his old gangmates from prison, all people he's betrayed or tried to kill. None of them respect him or trust him, but they join him for money, even though if he had money he'd have already paid the Seven, but that's besides the point. So these middle-aged dudes go on a journey together, where now they're gunning down an entire police force just to try and get rid of a single target. They could have taken the helicopter on the roof and escaped after the assassination, but then this game wouldn't be able to waste your time and pull your nerves for another 35 minutes straight. Afterwards, they head into the jungle, where they shoot what feels like an infinite amount of soldiers, only to encounter the Seven again, and this time take revenge. In the end, Kane has to decide between saving his men who don't trust him or his daughter who hates him. Both endings suck and left you feeling like you wasted your freaking time. Though if you pick the helicopter ending, at least you won't have to go through another level of never-ending meat shields that just throw themselves at you and you need to mow them down for 20 minutes straight, surrounded by the most forgettable characters ever written in video game history, allowing you to finally put this or excuse of a game where it truly belongs. Now, I'm sure there's people out there who live and die by this game and will swear it's actually great if you just look at it from another perspective. But guess what? There's people who shove life gerbils up their ass and swear it's actually great if you just look at it from another perspective. So I'm not here to change anybody's opinion. You like what you like, and I'm sure looking through nostalgia glasses, you can find some value here. However, the best thing this game had going for it, its only piece of notoriety, is getting a guy fired for speaking the truth about it. Even by 2007 standards, this thing was mediocre, and just given its reception as a total package, you'd think it would just go down as another shit stain in the never-ending pages of gaming history. But that's not what happened, because somehow, someway, this thing actually got a sequel. Kane and Lynch 2, Dog Days, is one of gaming's biggest unexplained mysteries. Why would anyone bother making a sequel for a game that barely sold 1 million copies and got pretty underwhelming reviews? That I don't know, but they did, so here we are. When it comes to gameplay, the shooting is slightly improved. Accuracy is significantly better in short range, though it is completely hopeless in long range. Now, instead of asking your teammates for ammo, you have a button that reveals weapons on the ground and you can pick them up or reload. Something you'll desperately need to do, as the game consistently forces you to go up against dozens of enemies at the same time. You can easily go through multiple weapons worth of ammo just to try and clean out a single squad. Cover has its own unique button now, which is great, and if you die, you just get knocked back to the ground and are able to get back up or go into cover, unless you're overwhelmed by enemies. The problem is the game lacks any minimap feature, so you'll constantly get lost, and with enemies fitting into the environment, you'll easily be killed from behind anytime you try to advance through an area. The biggest change is the third-person camera, which actually shakes and moves like in real life. To say this experience is nauseating is putting it mildly. Thankfully, it can be turned off during gameplay, but not in cutscenes, so you'll feel nausea every time you're forced into a cutscene, where in some cases it's almost impossible to figure out what is even happening. I won't bother dedicating a whole chapter to the story, cause there is no story. Kane arrives in Shanghai to form a deal of some kind, we don't know what. It somehow erupts into a gang war where they get captured and tortured, with Lynch's girlfriend being killed. So they take out what feels like 1,000 cops, soldiers and gang members before assassinating some executive, with the game ending when you escape on a passenger plane. The only thing I liked about it was it revealed the helicopter ending from the previous game is the canon version, so you didn't have to waste your time trying to save any of your teammates. Overall though, the story is a mess. Honestly, I've had more logical stories in my fever dreams than whatever this crime tale was supposed to be. I played through the entirety of it, and even I don't know what it was about. They've added some interesting elements like dogs and special effects to the gameplay, but despite that, the gameplay is overwhelmingly worse, as you'll be ambushed by so many enemies at the same time. You'll literally be forced to run around and collect weapons in the middle of gunfights, cause you'll run out of bullets trying to shoot all of them. It happens literally all the time. It's like we're playing Trevor's Rampage missions on Grand Theft Auto 5 over and over and over again, except with worse shooting mechanics and in blender environments. It's just an unfun experience, and if I have to be honest, despite the better graphics, it felt more like a DLC add-on by the end rather than a standalone game, and a pretty poor one at that. I've never been so desperate to see the end credits of a game before, because I was so miserable playing it. I know Angry Joe gave it a 3 out of 10 back in 2010 when he reviewed it, but by today's standards, a 1.5 out of 10 seems far more appropriate.
4 hours.
My God!
That's actually not true. When I went through my recordings in order to put this video together, I found out that I was able to beat it in under 3 hours. As a matter of fact, I did that by taking pauses, messing around with settings, and even taking breaks. Had I just grinded through the story, I bet you I would have been able to take it in 2 hours and a half, no problem. So, sorry Angry Joe, it's not a 4-hour game, it is far less than that. But I get it, because honestly, if you were to ask me how long it took me to beat Kane and Lynch 2, I probably would have told you 5 hours right after I finished it, because it just feels like forever. The game is so monotone, so boring, everything just takes forever and looks the same, that you really feel you're in slow sand. It's like time just stops, it screeches to a halt. It's like that boring semester in college or a boring class in high school, where it's supposed to take 45 minutes, but it just feels like 2 hours. It is like time being stretched by the amount of mind-numbing bore you are forced to endure. And if that is not a perfect metaphor for Kane and Lynch, I don't know what is. Until next time, this has been WildGold, and thank you all so very much for watching.